Maybe it's just my frontal lobe starting to click into place, but I don't think I want to be sexy anymore. That's my opinion! At least not in the way that I thought I did for the past 10 years, because I do think that ever since I was 14, I had this notion in my brain that if I was sexy and desirable, then I would get everything that I wanted. And what sparked this thought for me is at my day job at SiriusXM, I work on a show where we're doing a Tom Cruise retrospective right now, and we're watching all 50 of Tom Cruise's movies. And we just got to Mission Impossible, and seeing how women operate in Mission Impossible and in the Mission Impossible franchise really reminded me of the other side of the coin of The Substance and Showgirls and Bombshell and fucking Wolf of Wall Street. These are all 5 very different movies and 5 very different depictions of what actually happens when a woman's body and beauty and sexuality are perceived as desirable, because it becomes a very large part of the currency of her career. Sometimes movies are critiquing it, sometimes they're participating in it, and sometimes they kind of do this dance where they're balancing both at the same time. And on that same day that I watched Mission Impossible and was starting to think about this, I rediscovered a series of essays that I wrote when I was living in New York City. And this essay was about me realizing that for the first time, I was unfuckable out there. And I know that sounds ridiculous or incredibly shallow, but I promise I'm not setting up a joke. It was so devastating. The realization wasn't actually that I wanted any of those men. I didn't. I was in a relationship at the time. I didn't want to sleep with any of them. I'm still balancing whether or not I actually am attracted to men like that at all, but I didn't necessarily like them. What I wanted was what I had convinced myself that their desire could buy me. I had somehow built this entire internal economy where if a man found me attractive, then I was valuable. And if he wanted me, then maybe he would hire me, and maybe he would introduce me to somebody, and maybe he would remember me, and I would get the audition or the job and the next opportunity. And I realized that wasn't something new I started doing in New York. I had been operating that way for years. And it isn't even male-centered relationships. I want all the boys to think I'm pretty. I had built this idea that I had to build a career around male validation while telling myself that I was building my career around my talent. I was making myself appealing to men I found disgusting because I had learned somewhere along the way that being appealing could be converted into money and opportunity and attention and success, access more than anything. Because when you work in entertainment like I do, access is key. That is how you get your career. And the really uncomfortable part that I realized was that I had been doing this outside of entertainment too. Before I was even an actor, way back when I was in grade school, I was working as a waitress, and I was doing the exact same thing as a waitress. I would purposely make myself appealing to men that were gross and I hated, because I knew that if they thought I was cute or sexy or funny, they would tip me more. And I could tell myself that it was just part of the job and I was being strategic and that I was good at reading people. But what happens when you spend years treating your desirability like a professional skill? What happens when you stop doing that? And for me, one of the answers was that I almost completely stopped working in acting in film and television. And that is the main part that I want to unpack today, because I don't think my experience is unique, and I don't think that this is only a problem in the entertainment industry. I think there's something much bigger happening with young women when we teach them, sometimes explicitly, sometimes subtly, that their ability to make money and get ahead and be taken seriously, or be chosen, or just be treated well, is connected with how desirable they are to men. Entertainment, I feel just makes the transaction easier to see. I saw it most predominantly in casting, which is what the essay revolved around. And you can see it in the way that women are photographed and marketed and dressed and interviewed and just talked about. You can see it in the waitress who smiles a little bit longer at the table that you can tell is eating that poor girl alive. You can see it in women who make herself smaller or prettier, flirtier, more agreeable, more sexually available, or just simply desirable because she learned that this version of herself tends to get better results. When eventually you have to ask yourself the most horrifying question of who am I when I stop performing for the people whose approval I thought I needed? And I think that is really the underlying question of this essay. I think it is a much bigger question than whether or not I felt pretty in New York City, but I am going to read you this essay that I wrote in 2022. I hope it hits you the same way that it hit me, because it really got me fucking thinking. This is on not being pretty in New York City. Not to toot my own horn, but I know for a fact that I am not ugly. Am I the hottest person to ever live? No. But am I a bridge troll? Definitely not. Obviously, I struggle with my confidence just as much as your next basic 20-year-old girl. I am not special or exempt. I have had my fair share of nasty teenage bitches successfully drag my confidence all the way down to rock bottom, but I have never been unfuckable. And I know, you're thinking, Julia, you can't just give in to patriarchal ideas that women's value only depends on how desirable she is to men, blah, 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 blah. I get it, okay? But in my opinion, telling girls that it'll be harder for them to succeed in life than men because of some outdated societal philosophy that men should rule over women without encouraging women to weaponize that philosophy is just as toxic as denying that we still live in a patriarchal society altogether. So even when I've been a bottom of the barrel pick, I have always made sure I am still desirable, because if there's one thing I've learned growing up, it's that men will bend over backwards for a woman they want to fuck. And if men have all the power, I want power over men. In California, it's not hard to be attractive. I'm just Mexican enough to appeal to the brown kids, while not too Mexican to scare off the white ones. I was pretty enough to be an option, but not hot enough to be intimidating. But none of that makes you attractive in California. You only need one quality to be the most enticing person in the room in California. You need to be a good listener. Not one single person in California can tell you what my favorite color is. Not a single person in California can tell you who my favorite music artist is. Not a single person in California can tell you the name of the town I grew up in. Not a single person in California can tell you what my favorite book is or why I honestly moved to New York City. I have one simple rule in California. Don't give anyone anything they didn't ask for. Attention, time, money, information. Everyone's favorite thing to do is talk about themselves and the stuff that they like. It's nothing personal, but they really don't give a shit about what you have to say unless it's something they can agree with or add to. Most people I know in California are probably skimming this essay, anxiously waiting to see if their name is even on the paper. But if you ask the questions they want you to and sit there listening while they tell you all about themselves, you're golden. You are the most attractive, empathetic, beautiful, kind person in the room. But in New York, no one gives a shit about each other. They don't need your opinion or validation here. They don't care if you're listening to them because they aren't interested in you. In California, I was curvy in my crop tops and bikinis. In New York, everybody is skinny from walking everywhere and constantly bundled up in layers and layers of clothes just to protect from the biting winds and cruel 10 degrees it is at night. Safe to say that it's not the ideal weather for a Cali native to try and rock her hot girl shit in, especially because I regularly have to wear 3 different types of pants every time I leave my apartment. The only time in my life I've ever felt ugly was at an audition, believe it or not. The only person who has ever rejected me solely on how I look was, you guessed it, a middle-aged white man in New York City. The audition was invite only for a company hiring quote-unquote dancers to motivate crowds at high-end events. There were over 60 people at the audition, and we would audition all together and be judged individually. A chorus line of them. They instructed us to join together as a group and follow the dance moves of a current company employee, kind of like a giant Zumba class. One by one, they would switch out who was on stage, and the task was simple. Engage the crowd, pick fun and easy dance moves for them to follow, maintain eye contact with your audience. Being from California, I love being the center of attention. Being a dancer, I love choreographing little dance bits to songs that are easy to dance to. I had this audition in the bag. There was no way in hell I didn't book this gig. You want an approachable people person who people like to talk to and can easily hype up a crowd? I'm your gal. Making people dance is my specialty. Finally, it was my turn to take the stage. I hop up and greet the crowd of desperate actors and dancers just trying to book the job that would pay their rent next month. I flash an award-winning smile and start getting these miserable motherfuckers to break it down. I was magic. I watched the stress and exhaustion from dancing for an hour straight melt off their faces. I watched smiles grow as bodies rolled and jumped on my command. Nobody missed a single beat. People laughed as we shimmied and hollered as we shook. We were screaming the lyrics to the song and dancing like prom at the end of a fucking Disney Channel original movie. Across from me, behind the crowd, stood a wall of mirrors. I glanced up of it, searching for the producer's look of approval as I captivated his entire crowd. I was searching for the eye contact and validation that he knew I was as perfect for this job as I did. I found his gaze in the mirror and it was pointed straight at me. Well, it was pointed straight at my ass. My confidence sank as I watched this 50-year-old white man rake his eyes down my legs, across my waist, across my chest and neck. His eyes settled on my face. Thank you very much. Next, we need after me was a skinny white girl in a matching Lululemon set, clearly a model who had been forced to come here by her manager. As we struggled to follow her shit show of awkward jerking and jumping, I watched the producer carefully. His eyes completely ravaged this girl as she did her best to dance without falling off the stage. And then it clicked for me. It wasn't about how good we were at working a crowd or maintaining the energy of the party. It wasn't about if we could do the job. They didn't even ask for resumes or proof that we could dance or work an event. It wasn't about the dancing. It was about how we looked dancing. Finally, after 3 hours of Zumba dancing without a single break and no one wanting to take one out of fear for looking out of shape, we were done for the night. The producer asked no one to leave as they would handle cuts that night and we would know before we even got home. They went outside the studio and discussed it for 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Over 60 dancers putting their entire pussies into this goddamn 3-hour-long weird hype-ass Zumba class, and it took them 5 minutes. Alrighty, the producer had the most smug look on his face as he soaked in the power and confidence he was about to take from us. If we say your names, please stay. If not, you're free to go. And please know you are more than welcome to come back. And I started putting on my shoes as soon as I saw how small the list of names was on his clipboard. I knew entertainment was a lot more no's than it was yeses, and I'd been cut first before, told that I just wasn't what they were looking for and the team was going in a different direction creatively. I'd completely bombed auditions before, and I knew that I wouldn't book because the performances I gave were just straight up bad. I had also been disappointed by auditions that I thought I had aced. I knew how to handle rejection, and I knew it wasn't personal, it's just business. But I had never been rejected solely on the fact that I wasn't fuckable enough. I had always been fuckable enough. I was fuckable enough in high school when my boyfriend Ethan broke up with me, and after one weepy woe is me conversation with his bros before hoes best friend, I had Jacob begging me to meet him in the copy room during tutorial. I was fuckable enough when Eli was fighting with his girlfriend and asked me to help him blow off some steam. I was fuckable enough when the local pot dealer in my neighborhood dumped his girlfriend for me after we went surfing together twice. I was fuckable enough at Fiona's birthday party when Luke did nothing to conceal the nasty, cruel fantasies he was having drunkenly across the room. I have always been fuckable enough to get whatever I needed, but not in New York City. I didn't even know how to be pretty in New York City. I spent the entire second week here trying to figure it out. I bought a long black winter coat that covered me down to my ankles. I ate salads and wore makeup. I bought a green beanie with a puffball on the top so I'd have something unique to catch people's eye. I wore all pink to a snowball fight in Washington Square Park. I wore corsets to dinner and expressed myself however I wanted through my fashion. Nothing worked. Nothing stuck. Not once since I've been in New York City have I felt pretty. Sure, I felt cute or sexy or fuckable, but feeling pretty isn't something you do for others, like dressing up to look hot for a date or dressing funny like Mojo Jojo to a Joe-themed party. Feeling pretty is a personal thing. It's feeling content with how you look and feel naturally. I have never not been pretty. I have never felt unfuckable, and I have never not held the power over a man. So how the fuck did this Humpty Dumpty ass take my power away from me? I had been to so many auditions. I had met so many middle-aged white men, and they had all done their fair share of eye-fucking me. I had always persisted. I had always won. So how did he beat me? Maybe it's because he looks like my dad, kind of, and that made me feel weird. Maybe it's because he said no when everyone else said yes. Maybe it's because he knew I had the best audition in the room and used me as a martyr. Who the fuck am I kidding? He didn't make me a martyr. He just didn't want to fuck me. That model in matching Lululemon's name was called. She got hired. Even after probably the cringiest, most embarrassing dance audition I have ever seen, she got hired. Guess he liked what he saw. On the subway ride home, I decided it was probably for the best I didn't get the job. Men like him tend to be very involved with the training and work process, and I already have a problem with male authority figures. It takes a lot for anyone using he, him pronouns to get me to genuinely respect them. My subconscious only values men's opinions for self-validation and disregards them otherwise. But I think it's honestly because I can't think of a single thing a man can do that a woman couldn't do better. A woman discovered DNA. Half the food and medicinal recipes in the world were created by women. Women can give birth. Women invented birth control. Women paint their faces to look completely different. Women sing like birds and dance like fairies. Even if it's something a woman couldn't necessarily do better than a man, it's still more pleasant and cool to watch a woman do it than a man. And you'd think with a mindset like that, I wouldn't let some middle-aged white man make me feel like Rumpelstiltskin after one audition. Feeling pretty is hard. New York doesn't really have beauty standards from what I can tell. But if you aren't confident enough to feel pretty, how the fuck is anybody supposed to think that you're beautiful?